Well, last week we found Jesus outdoing himself in the role of miracle worker. With just 5 small barley loaves, 2 sardine-sized fish, and the cooperation of a young boy, Jesus managed to feed 5,000 hungry people. It must have made quite an impact because it's the only miracle of Jesus that's recorded in all 4 Gospels. It certainly made an impact on the crowds because John's Gospel reports that the people began to describe him as the prophet who is to come into the world, and they even tried to take him by force to make him their king. And immediately afterward, we find the disciples in a boat on the sea, riding out a nighttime storm. And when they looked up, lo and behold, they saw Jesus still in his role as miracle worker, walking on the water toward them. That's the setting in which we enter today's text, as Jesus is talking with the crowds the next day. Now, if you're like me, you may be somewhat taken aback by the people's arrogant demands for proof of his credentials, especially in light of these miracles just the day before. From the safety of my own sheltered life, I follow along in the pages of my Bible, shake my head and sympathize with this long-suffering Jesus who had to endure so many ungrateful and self-centered people. Fred Craddock writes that they still want to be in charge, even of faith itself. Show us a sign. We will see. We will weigh the evidence. We will draw the conclusions. And we might even decide to believe. And as tempting as it may be for us to look down our noses at the crowds, if we're honest, we have to ask ourselves if this doesn't sound like us, at least sometimes. I believe today's reading not only sounds like much of 21st century American Christianity, but it also raises some important questions which we would do well to address. In our reading, actually in a few verses prior to our reading, Jesus is confronting the consumerist attitudes of the crowds. The people are drawn to Jesus, but for the wrong reason. And Jesus says to them, "Very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." The crowds aren't interested in how their lives will be transformed by their encounter with Jesus. All this mysterious talk about the dominion of heaven and what it is like means nothing to them. Words like love, forgiveness, and radical hospitality sound hollow and fall on deaf ears. They lived a hand-to-mouth existence, never knowing where their next meal would come from. But in Jesus, they had discovered someone who could seemingly magically produce food from almost nothing. This was what attracted them to the Christ, and so they didn't want to let him out of their sight. But before we so quickly dismiss the superficial attitudes of these crowds, we may want to look at some of our own. What is it that attracts us to the spiritual life? Are the hungry crowds who follow Jesus really so different from today's television viewers who hope they will experience prosperity if they just invest their own finances in the ministry of the local televangelist? Is the first century peasant seeking a bite to eat really so far removed from the 21st century person seeking a cure for their chronic illness? Today we shop like consumers for the church that best meets our own needs. We look for the preacher who makes us feel warm and fuzzy instead of one who disturbs us into honest self-appraisal. We give our money to the church that expects little from us other than our occasional attendance, instead of the church which offers us an opportunity to grow spiritually. We enter the doors with our list of demands and requirements, and if the church doesn't meet those needs, we simply take our business elsewhere. If the crowds seemed shallow and superficial because they were attracted to Jesus because of the free meal that seemed to come from him, we may want to look at some of the reasons we are attracted to Jesus, to the church, or to what we may call the spiritual life. Another question we may want to ask ourselves is what engages us in the spiritual life. What attracts us to this church family may not necessarily be what keeps us here. The crowds put the question to Jesus in another way. What must we do to perform the works of God? Now that we've arrived, what is it that we need to be doing? For the religious person, the question is, how much money should I be giving? How often should I pray, and what's the proper technique? What church should I attend, and how often? What programs ought the church to be operating? Should it focus on the hungry, the poor, on Christian education, or on social activities? Should our money go to local ministries or global ministries? What must we do to perform the works of God? Those are the questions of the religious person. The spiritual person asks a different question, though. How should I be in order for God to use me? How do I open myself to God's will? What faith community encourages me to grow spiritually? What family of believers supports me, lifts me up, and affirms me as a child of God? What church offers opportunities for me to be more and do more than I ever dreamed possible? What group of people encourages me to share my gifts and even helps me to discover them? The question isn't so much what must I do, as the crowds asked. Instead, it is, what is my calling? So if the first question is what attracts us to the spiritual life, and the next question is what engages us in the spiritual life, the last question is what keeps us within the spiritual life. For the crowds, it was signs and wonders. The crowds wanted a sign from Jesus. What work are you performing? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. Are you as great as Moses? If so, then maybe, just maybe, we'll stick around. And sometimes we too make our own demands on God. We expect God to measure up to our own expectations because we're only willing to worship our Americanized version of God. A God who wants everyone to be wealthy, happy, prosperous, and well-tanned. And if you'll just be good, then this God will keep anything bad from happening to you. This God will make your business prosper. Your kids will be healthy and cool and successful. You'll have designer clothes. Everything will be comfortable and nice and peachy, and your promised land will eventually come. All of these good things are the proof that we 21st century Christians seek from God. Forget about sending manna from heaven. If God is willing to do these things for us, then and only then will we become followers. But when we do this, we treat God like a genie in a bottle. 3 wishes and God gives us what we want. When we turn God into a means to an end, a measly errand boy to fetch what we really want. We want proof of God's love in the form of external blessings, but what we fail to realize is there is no proof. There is just God's presence. That's it. That's what we get. We are guaranteed that come hell or high water, God will see us through. God doesn't promise the good life. God just offers us hope. And that's our proof. The crowds wanted a sign as proof of Jesus' credentials, but all they got was Jesus. We can look all we want for external signs of God's love, but in the end, all we really get is God's love. And for me, that's enough. That's what will carry me through the good times and the bad times. Because there will be bad times. God never promised that there won't be. I just want to know that I'm not alone. That God is with me. If I know that, then I will know everything will be okay. When Jesus said, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." For me, that means immerse yourself in me, and everything will be okay. Ultimately, you will be satisfied. And you help me do that. Because it's in you that I experience the living Christ. It's through you that I learn how to love and forgive. You reveal Christ to me. And when that happens, I don't need any signs and wonders. I just need Jesus. Amen.